Yeah. I know. It's the Wednesday night special and it's Thursday. I got it. Don't start with me today. Don't do it. Did not have a good night last night. I watched this infuriating debate. I mean, if I'm the GOP, what do I want? I want Fox News, which is going down the crapper. The best person on there was Perino, right? Okay. Let me just show you something that Dana was doing last week.
Of our organization was somebody that you are here to see, the amazing Secretary Hillary Clinton. Here she is.
Yeah. So there she is having a moment. Let's have a moment here. Oh, it's so great. Okay, so that was the best one out of everybody at the debate. Why would the GOP want this on Fox, not Fox News, Fox Business, which has about 12 people watching? About 8 of them are on the second floor of the Fox News Corp. Sorry. I don't know if Murdoch's watching anymore. So maybe there's 11 people watching that. Then they coupled with Univision. I felt bad for the candidates because I could barely understand what she was saying. And if any of those candidates said, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that, they would have immediately been called racist, of course, by the mainstream media. It was a shouting fest. It was like watching a whole bunch of teenaged, really spoiled 90210 kind of kids just talking over each other like nobody else existed. I want to put them in soundproof booths, okay? They used to have these things on game shows, and they put you in a soundproof booth so you couldn't hear anything, and we couldn't hear you if we shut the booth off. That's the way this should be done. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous what happened. Now, before we get in, I've got a great panel for you today. We're going to talk about this. Before we get into that, I would just like to show you what the guy who I think was the winner last night, because he had no taint on him at all, because he didn't show up, which I don't really love, but at least he didn't show up to that horror show last night. He was at the UAW, something that I don't think anybody really understands that was on the stage that could really, truly articulate what is going on. But here he is talking about the real problem with the union strike at the UAW in Detroit. Cut 39.
To the striking workers, I support you in your goal of fair wages and greater stability, and I truly hope you get a fair deal for yourselves and your families. But if your union leaders will not demand that Crooked Joe repeal his electric vehicle mandate immediately, then it doesn't matter what hourly wage you get. It just doesn't make a damn bit of difference, because in 2 to 3 years, you will not have one job in this state.
True dat. Okay, so let's go through what we have from last night. Let's get everybody's opinion as we go. First, let me introduce everybody. We have my executive producer and on-air nemesis, Stu Burguiere. We also have Pat Gray from Pat Gray Unleashed. And joining us from his underground bunker someplace in the middle of the country is Steve Deace. Hello, Steve.
Howdy, gentlemen. And man, I am looking white, like Mike Pence white.
Okay, can we just
Pence is so white, white people look at him and call him a cracker.
Yeah,
I mean, that is what I look like right now. Wow.
Could we just ask you, Mike Pence? I mean, when my wife, who is a very, very kind individual, when my wife says, I can't stand him, why is he still on television? Why is he there? He is so, I don't know, and I never felt this way before about Mike Pence. He just feels smarmy and fake, and is it just me?
No.
Very stiff.
Yeah.
He talks at 1 word per hour at that pace. Is very strange. He's constantly sniffing or breathing out through his nose into the microphone, which I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but it was driving me nuts. And obviously he has no chance of winning this primary. I mean, I get why he ran. What else is he going to do, right? But there's no reason for him to be in this race at all.
Yeah, he thinks that everything he says is profound, which is why he pauses after every word, trying to think, okay, there's an applause line coming here. Pretty soon, they're going to break out into applause.
I just don't know when it's
I don't know when it's going to happen, though.
Yeah.
And then it never comes, and it's embarrassing. It's
really
embarrassing.
bad and awkward.
It is.
Steve?
Mike Pence is unfortunately the embodiment of the biological male that has inhabited and infested many of our pulpits and public offices in this last generation. He's a walking ad for Cialis. He is a man of perpetual forlorn look. I counted 4 times last night at least where he thought he had given some applause line or something that mattered, and there was absolutely no reaction whatsoever. He is the cringe master, Glenn. And my only theory as to why they keep him around, you know what happened to if you keep moving the stapler guy, if you ever saw Office Space, if you keep moving the stapler guy further down the hall, at the end of the movie, he blows up the building, you know?
Right.
And so I think there's a fear of what Mike Pence will do if you don't let him in. And so we'll just have to keep humoring this guy all the way to the end.
But in the real world here, in Iowa, isn't he doing really well?
No.
Oh,
No.
I thought he was. Okay, good. Whew,
No.
I was really going to start to question people in Iowa.
No.
Ooh.
No. There's only 2 candidates in Iowa right now. There's only 2.
And they are?
And they're Trump and DeSantis. And Trump has the persona, and he's been good for the state of Iowa as someone who spent over a decade trying to turn Iowa into a red state. We still struggled with all of our gains to get into rural areas that still thought we were nothing but corporatist shills. And Trump helped us switch those last 25, 30 counties that voted for Obama once or twice into Republican counties. And so he has a base here. And then you have DeSantis exciting a lot of people here and running a lot of the evangelical turnout model that Cruz worked so well, that I was a part of with that in 2016. Everybody else is vying for third. There was a moment earlier this year where I think Vivek could have been a third. There was a moment this summer where Tim Scott could have been a third. Maybe a moment until last night that Nikki Haley could have been a third. But those 2 are going to more than twice lap the rest of the field on January 15th, I believe.
I mean, let's just get out all of the people that should be out right now. First of all, the Muppet at the end from North Dakota. I mean, please go away. Yeah, just go away. He scares me every time I see him on. He's like, oh my gosh, ease me into that shot, will you? He's a total Muppet. The things he said, I just felt was like, why are you? Well, every time he would speak, I'm like, why are you here wasting our time? Christie, you know, he's fun to watch, but he is completely out of step with. I mean, he might be in step with, I don't know, Mitch McConnell, but he's completely out of step. Mike Pence shouldn't be there. I love Tim Scott. But Tim's not ready. It's not a primetime show for him. He doesn't have a chance to be president. Nikki Haley is, again, a little like Mike Pence when it comes to Ukraine and everything else. I think she's out of step with the Republicans, except the establishment Republicans.
Well, but they're still part of the party, right? I mean, so they do get votes, and they should have a candidate, I guess, that represents their viewpoint.
Yeah. Okay, let's narrow it down to 4. Who would the 4 be if you had a debate? Who should be there?
Are we counting Trump or no?
Yes, we're counting Trump. Okay. He should be there.
So he's going to come. I would say Trump, DeSantis, Haley, and who's the 4th?
Ramaswamy.
Those are the 4. I think if I was going to add a 5th to that, oddly, I think I would actually choose Christie, because Christie also is representing a very small slice of the party, sort of the anti-Trump sort of, and that is a part of the party. Like Scott is just. Scott and Haley are pretty much the same. You could throw Pence into that view as well. They're very, very similar. There's no real point. Burgum is obviously no one knows who he is. If you just eliminate those 3, you get down to 4 on the stage last night. It would be a 5th with Donald Trump. That's at least a field. I mean, at least Christie is somewhat good at times at these debates, although he was also horrible at times last night.
Well,
but he's
Duck. Oof.
oh god, that was terrible. But I think there you actually have a pretty wide spectrum of the entire Republican voting base there, right? You have some, the anti-Trumps, you obviously have the Trump. I mean, Ramaswamy is sort of overlapping on the populist side, but you have DeSantis, I think maybe the standard, conservative view. And then Nikki Haley, maybe more of that like internationalist, hawkish sort of view. Those are all represented in the party. It's not bad that they have people to vote for.
No.
But at some point, when you have duplicates of the exact same person, and it's clear which one is doing better, it would be good if these people just dropped off and we could actually have a conversation.
Yeah, because we didn't have a conversation last night at all. Did you get anything out of this last night?
Nothing, except I want to go to bed. That's what I got out of it. Let me go to bed.
Yeah,
This
I
is
would
a
have
waste
tuned
of
out
my
within the
time.
first 10 minutes.
Yeah,
First 10
I would have
minutes.
too. That's what I said on the air today. I would have been gone way before I was, but I had to watch it, and I really resent that.
They don't pay us enough money. They don't pay us enough money. What did you get out of this debate, Steve?
Well, I mean, I love Doug Burgum talking about come to North Dakota for school choice when, as Corey DeAngelis pointed out, he vetoed a school choice bill earlier this year. So I
he
thought
was
that
partnering. No. He was partnering with the teachers' unions, which I thought rang all of the musical bells conservatives want to hear.
Wow,
crazy.
I think there's two things, two plots of this production last night. There is the Fox News plot. And
Yes.
if you know what happens at the end of Old Yeller, he was once a trustworthy dog.
Yes.
The problem, and he defends the family against the wolf, but then he gets bit by the wolf, right? And now he's got rabies. And so they got to put Old Yeller down because now he's so sick that he'll turn on the family if they don't. That's Fox News. There was a moment where they put people like you on the air with your chalkboards. There was a moment in the late 90s when Bill O'Reilly was there as a culture warrior. There was a moment until earlier this year that Tucker Carlson was allowed to go down rabbit trails and expose false narratives. This thing is a sick organism now, and it just needs to be put down. And I think you saw all the worst trend lines of Fox News and linear cable play out last night for sure.
Okay, so let me just put this out there and then respond after I break for a quick commercial. I don't think that Fox News was the biggest loser. They were a huge loser. I mean, you watched that, and there was no reason that a national debate, that America had a debate that bad, and on that channel when there are other options. But the real loser, I think, was the GOP because they picked Fox Business and Univision.
Glenn, it's the most GOP thing ever to say we really need to have a Marxist panelist. So let's find one that no one can understand because, there's not plentiful options of Marxist in the media that you could have put up there that could form a cogent sentence. You had to know you were off to a bad start when at the beginning Stuart Varney cannot talk and pronounce her name. And it was either past his bedtime or he didn't get enough martinis in before go time, one or the other.
Well,
that was kind of the
I actually felt bad for him because I butcher names all the time. But as he butchered the name, I thought, look at how afraid he is. He's paralyzed with fear. It's not an honest mistake anymore. Oh, God, I'm going to be a racist because I can't pronounce her name. I mean, this was just an amazing circus show that we saw last night. Okay, I want to come back and talk about the GOP and Fox in just a minute. First, let me tell you about Jace Medical. I've been talking about Jace Medical and the Jace case for some time now. You just go online, you fill out a form, and then you get prescriptions. You get life-saving medications delivered right to your door. The Jace case gives you peace of mind, so you're not just hoping to have some access to medication in an emergency. You actually have it. If we ever have a shortage, I'm telling you, you are going to thank me for telling you about Jace Medical. You can get all of your life-saving drugs. You can get antibiotics just in the Jace case. You can have a year's supply worth of all of the medications that your family needs. This is Jace Medical. I want you to go there now, jacemedical.com. Use the promo code Beck at checkout, jacemedical.com. So we're just talking about the debate. This is the worst debate I have seen, and I've seen Ford and Carter go at it, okay? This is the worst debate by far. And if Donald Trump would have attended, he would have gotten the blame. See, it's just chaos. No. the GOP and Fox News can provide all the chaos necessary. It looked horrible. What's her name? Ronna McDaniel from the GOP. I don't know what she's doing. But she is clearly just one of these, GOP robots that, Fox is our way. Let's keep moderate. Let's not do anything. When Christie was on stage and he chastised the Congress for maybe shutting down the government, I thought to myself, what world are these people living in?
It's a very strange one, whatever it is. And I wonder, too, beyond the problems with the GOP and beyond the problems with Fox, I wonder if this format is really just dead.
I think this is a sign, Stu. Fox, old media, dead.
Yeah.
GOP, dead. It's old, dusty. It just
Old is in the name.
Yeah.
Grand old party.
Yeah, it feels like the grand old party.
It does.
And then this form of debate is just over. This is the churning of, and that's why I think Vivek is so important. Maybe not for 24, but at least he was saying we've got to reach out to young people.
Yeah. Right. I mean, it almost felt like watching like the British Army walk in formation back in the day. It was it feels so old and outdated, and you're getting nothing out of it. When at the same time, people are having 3-hour-long podcast conversations where you're actually really learning something about this. I mean, I've heard debates on, I know Megyn Kelly's done some of them, Barry Weiss has done some of them, where they will bring in two opposing people and talk out over an hour and a half really in-depth issues that, between two people who disagree. And I understand you have a lot of people up there. There are constraints. But the end of the day is trying to, ring bells like they're dogs to stop them, and all of them keep barking. Yep. It's just such a pathetic format, and we learn nothing from it. We're all looking for that big moment where someone has the big soundbite or their prepared line really lands. I mean, I know last night Donald Duck was certainly it, but we're all looking for that moment. And it's not going to happen, and it's also not how we should make the decisions if it does happen.
In case you missed the Donald Duck moment, here it is.
Oh, no.
And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
And somebody's already made it. Somebody has already made it. God bless America and God curse America for this moment. Steve Deace, I know you've already endorsed somebody. I haven't endorsed anybody. None of you guys have endorsed anybody. No. Honestly, I won't vote for Christie. I won't vote for Burgum. And there's another one in Pence I won't vote for. But the rest of I'd even vote for Pence. If that was it,
Biden?
If it was against Biden, I'd vote for Pence. Yeah. However, I haven't made a decision on who to endorse because honestly, I think this may be our last choice. This may be the Republic's last honest choice if it isn't already banked because of corruption. Steve?
And that's why I did what I did, Glenn. That, and the other reason is where I live. I'm heavily involved in Iowa and the caucus process. It's how I came up in this business. And so I just to sit here and act as if I'm this impartial. If I lived down in Dallas with the rest of you all, I probably would not have endorsed.
Correct.
But I don't. I live here, and it's going on in my backyard. My phone is ringing off the hook. I talk to people that are involved in this constantly, and so to act like my thumb's not on the scale, to act like I'm not involved and I'm above it all, and I'm not embroiled in it the minute I get off the air, I just thought would be completely disingenuous to this audience. And then I considered what you just said there also. This may be the last chance. I mean, I liked a lot of what Donald Trump did prior to March 16, 2020. For me, I kind of feel like Ron DeSantis is like the manifestation of like every show I've ever done in my career. And this might be my only chance to get to support somebody like that. But also being in my backyard to feign objectivity when I'm talking to these people we're talking about and their people all the time, I just thought it would be really disingenuous of me, and I didn't want to do that.
Pat?
I'm truly, legitimately undecided right now. I really like DeSantis. I like him a lot. But I like Ramaswamy a lot, too. And, you know, there's Trump. I like him.
I'd vote for all three of them.
I'd vote for any.
I just don't
even
feel
three.
like our opinion should sway anyone. You know what I mean? I have played this game for so long. Hey, Pat, when's the last time you and I had a candidate that we were for that won?
It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
It's been a while.
It's been a very long time, okay?
Yeah.
And, you know, so what difference does it make with what I say?
Yeah.
And people get so angry at each other, and we have got to come back together. I mean, I think all of them have real problems. I think, and that's why I think we do need to decide on number 2. And if DeSantis is serious, he needs to run all the way to the convention. Because Donald Trump, anything could happen. Mm-hmm. Anything could happen. He could be in prison.
I think this is a key point, Glenn. This is a key point. That let's pretend there are no other candidates in the race. It's just Donald Trump. He is facing 91 felony indictments. And I think a lot of our people are acting as if this is like Russian collusion. And so someone like Bill Barr is going to come off the sidelines and expose the whole thing as a scam, and it will just all go away one day. They're going to seat juries. They've already indicted him. They've already arraigned him. They're going to do this. I mean, this is how we do assassination in America today. We don't do Dealey Plaza anymore. We do it lawfare or character assassination. They are assassinating him in real time as we watch. The idea that we can all just sit here, even if he ran unopposed in this primary, and be guaranteed that they're going to even permit him to be on enough ballots to get to 270 in November of next year, that's way too many variables. And that's why we have to have other candidates in the race because of what you just said.
But wait,
that's they don't intend to let us to vote for him, Glenn.
No,
that's what people don't understand.
I'm not stupid.
They won't let us vote for him. That's their goal.
I know. I know. But here is my question. If you really believe in Donald Trump, why should you be talked off of Donald Trump instead of standing up and fighting and saying, wait a minute, this is bullcrap? Now, I have to tell you, I don't see a good way this ends, okay? Because if Donald Trump is sent to prison, people are not going to stand for that. If he's taken off the ballot, people aren't going to stand for that. If he loses in the primary, maybe, but if he wins in the general or another, this little plastic feature wins, they will take to the streets and say that it was rigged, it was Russian influence, and they will do everything that they've accused the January 6th people of doing. Mm-hmm. It'll be chaos in the street. I honestly don't see a way where this works out well unless, it is such a thread that's got to go through several needles. Am I wrong?
No, it's scary. It's really scary. And we have to look how contentious things are. Every time on the air, if I say something good about DeSantis, the Trump people hate my guts. If I say something good about Trump, the DeSantis people hate my guts. It is so vitriolic within our own party. And this is the time when we're trying to figure it out. This is the time when you pick the best candidate and you want to hear what each of them have to say and you want to debate what they all have to say.
None of them, in the top 4, none of them are horrible choices. None of them are horrible choices. We could survive. Well, Donald Trump, just because he throws hand grenades into rooms and you don't know what the reaction is going to be to the hand grenade, But same thing with Ron DeSantis. While he doesn't throw a hand grenade, he's silent but deadly. And they're not going to put up with all of that because somebody is going to have to clean house in the deep state.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, it's very complicated, and I think I go back to the early days of us doing the show and thinking as as a producer, this should be the most interesting time for our business, right? Like, this is the time where we're not choosing between a conservative and Joe Biden, where all we can do is basically point out the blatantly obvious differences between these people. Some of these people are pretty close. Some of these people are good, and some of these people can do certain things really well and other things not so well. And this would be a really interesting time to have your favorite on-air personalities on BlazeTV or whatever other format there is, to kind of suss out these differences and try to figure it out. And instead, it turns into the least interesting time in this business because everyone gets so passionate for good reasons with good intent. But the team thing kicks in so hard for people that they won't even look at other candidates. I mean, look, and they start to do things that are just crazy, right? Like, Trump supporters who absolutely adored Ron DeSantis 4 months ago now think he's Satan. When Vivek Ramaswamy would come on the show, the audience would receive him really, really well. Many of those same people don't like him now because maybe they like DeSantis or Haley or somebody else. And that's not a rational way to come to a very important decision. I think if you learn something going through life, the one thing you want to try to discipline yourself on is to make decisions in a sober manner, right? Like, try to make them rationally and calmly with a thought process that is based on something. And I do feel like at times emotion turns into that something, and that's a very bad thing for our republic.
Yeah, it is. And we all have to come back together. We all have to come back. Whoever the candidate is, we all have to come back together, or we stand no chance of winning. All right, I want to ask you when we come back, what is the most important thing you think the American people want to know? I think it's the economy, but I just read another poll today that said this woke, trans stuff that's happening with children even beats the economy. But there's also war. And I really haven't heard anybody explain the UAW strike and how that has caused inflation and how it is that the workers are right. They know something that no one will talk about. I'm not saying their solution is right, but they know what's coming. And I don't see anybody on stage really recognizing it and talking about it. We'll go there in a second. First, let me tell you about Relief Factor. I'm the luckiest man in the world because I have the best wife. Sorry, gentlemen, but the votes are the votes. Okay? I can only count them. My wife would not listen to me whining and made me try Relief Factor when I was in pain. Stu's wife and my wife, they're a little alike. They're not humored by us anymore at one point. Mm-hmm. You're there now too?
Oh, gosh,
yeah.
Of course.
They thought we were funny at one point. They liked it, and now, no time. My wife told me, stop, we were wanting, try Relief Factor. I said, honey, it's not going to work. It does. I'm now taking piano lessons. I am learning to play the piano. I am painting again. I couldn't do this with my hands just a few years ago. If you're dealing with pain, please try Relief Factor. ReliefFactor.com. Get the 3-week quick start, $19.95. ReliefFactor.com. Okay, let me play 3 cuts for you. You tell me what you get from these cuts. Here's cut 3, Mike Pence on the striking workers.
Vice President Pence, last week you said you side with American workers, but you also support how these companies operate. Which is it?
Well, thank you for the question. I want to thank Univision and Fox Business for assembling such a wonderful forum. Look, I do disagree with something Tim Scott just said. Joe Biden doesn't belong on a picket line. He belongs on the unemployment line. I mean, look, I'm from the second leading manufacturing state in the country per capita. I was governor of the state of Indiana. We brought 12,000 factories back to America during our administration. I know something about manufacturing. And I got to tell you, while the union bosses are talking about class warfare and talking about disparity in wages, I have to tell you, I really believe what's driving that is Bidenomics has failed. Wages are not keeping up with inflation. Auto workers and all American workers.
What do you get from this?
He really thanks Univision for.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But what are you getting from this? You're getting Bidenomics failed.
Yeah.
Okay, Bidenomics. Mm-hmm. That doesn't say anything that is really useful. What you're talking about the strike, you need to say, this administration is outlawing outlawing gasoline engines. Soon, they'll be gone. Yeah. That's what American industry builds. Now, they've already bailed them out once in 2008. They're bailing them out now because nobody wants these cars. Ford has just lost $2 billion this year. But don't worry, the government will just print more and pay it to Ford so they can stay open for a while. Now, because you don't want the car, they're printing up more money to try to get you to buy a car. And so they're putting that fake money into it. Then Joe Biden comes in and says, you should make $136 an hour or whatever crazy amount it is. You should have that. How are they going to do it? They won't be able to do it. And they won't be able to do anything because of EVs long-term, batteries long-term. And we won't be able to survive because of all of the bailouts with bogus money. Your cost of living, your food prices are not going up. The value of your dollar is going down. Tell this administration no more EVs unless the people want them and you can build them at a price they will pay. Period. Why didn't anybody say that?
And don't be mandating whether or not Detroit has to build EVs at the expense of all other vehicles. That doesn't make any sense. And they've got such a good point here to make, and they never make it. And that's the environmental point. You're digging up 500,000 pounds of earth for every single EV battery. 500,000 pounds of earth to make one battery.
Oh, my God.
One. Is that sustainable? If you make every car EV, wow, we're going to be one giant mine on this planet.
It's unbelievable. Let me go to a next cut. And Stu, I'd like you to answer to this. Tell me what you learned from this and Christie.
The government will shut down if Congress does not reach a deal by the end of this week. Vice President Pence warns that politics of, quote, Trump's populist protégés, like Mr. Ramaswamy, are a road to ruin for the GOP. If the government shuts down, should voters blame populist Republicans?
Voters should blame everybody who's in Washington, D.C. They get sent down there to do the job, and they've been failing at doing the job for a very long time. And let's be honest about this with the voters. You know, during the Trump administration, they added $7 trillion in national debt. And now the Biden administration has put another $5 trillion on and counting. They have failed, and they're in the spot they're in now because none of them are willing to tell the truth. None of them are willing to take on the difficult issues. They just want to keep kicking the can down the road. And the inflation that Nikki spoke about is absolutely right, and it's caused by government spending. And that's why people all across this country are suffering tonight. And yet we don't get any answers because Joe Biden hides in his basement and won't answer as to why he's raising the debt the way he's done. And Donald Trump hides behind the walls of his golf clubs and won't show up here to answer questions like all the rest of us are up here to answer. He put $7 trillion on the debt. He should be in this room to answer those questions for the people you talk about who are suffering. And if the government closes, it's the blame. It is to the blame of everyone in Washington, D.C. who has failed to do their job and just plays to the grandstand.
What do you get? Because this is what I would have liked to hear. Close the damn government down. You closed the American people for almost a year. Every business, unless it was a big business that you had your teeth into, every business had to close. We had to survive, and we did survive. I think the government can survive a shutdown for a couple of weeks. If the problem is inflation, then you must shut it down if you can't cut it. What did you get?
Of course, they won't cut it.
No.
Well, it's one of those things with Christie. Some of that I really agree with. Like the fact that, Look, there were $7 trillion added to the deficit, and no one ever, or the debt, and no one ever talks about it. It's important that they did. In fact, not only did they not talk about it, we had to sit through Mike Pence then criticizing Ron DeSantis on spending after all the trillions of dollars that Pence and along with Trump added to the debt, along with the Congress as well. Throughout that period. The spending part is really important, Glenn. I mean, you've talked about this for a really long time. If you go down this road, if you keep spending, eventually there becomes a time where you have to pay the piper. We are now seeing these treasury rates go up to points that are completely unsustainable. We're going to wind up having a defense budget to pay for every year in interest alone that will give us nothing of value except for the stuff that we've already spent in the past. And it was very rare that anyone talked about it. I appreciated that part of it. When Christie gets to the point, though, when he's talking about the government and how it's a big failure that it shuts down, it's hard for me to get excited or worked up about that. I think you're right. Like, we are at a point where the government is so bloated and does so many things incorrectly when they're there. What could go wrong if it did shut down? When they said it was only people who were unnecessary that would stay home, and then the vital
only
employees, essential employees, just like we heard through COVID, only essential employees would show up. Well, it didn't. I don't think I noticed one difference. I didn't notice a bit of difference when that happened last time. And frankly, they should be sending a message and hold a line on spending for once. This is not something that I have a problem with.
Okay, let me go to Steve with one clip. Steve, here's Ron DeSantis. Tell me what
crime in these cities is one of the strongest signs of the decaying of America. We can't be successful as a country if people aren't even safe to live in places like Los Angeles and San Francisco. Just being in Southern California over the last couple days, my wife and I have met 3 people who have been mugged on the street, and that would have never happened 10 or 20 years ago. In Florida, we back the blue. We support the men and women of law enforcement. They are keeping us safe. We have a 50-year low in the crime rate. And yes, when I had 2 progressive prosecutors that weren't following the law in Florida, I removed them from their posts, and the people of Florida are safer as a result of it. As president, I will use the Justice Department to bring civil rights cases against all of those left-wing Soros-funded prosecutors. We're not going to let them get away with it anymore. We want to reverse this country's decline. We need to choose law and order over rioting and disorder.
Steve, what do you get from that?
I think the central issue in this election and in this country, Glenn, is leadership. And I think that there is no leadership, whether we're talking about wokeism, the economy, the culture. There is no leadership. There are very few people willing to do what is necessary, commit the kinds of actions necessary to reverse the trend line of where we are. And I think that we're in an era now where we have to acquire power for the sake of using it. Because we have to roll back the social compact. Last time you and I spoke, I made this point. The social compact is broken. So this idea that I won't do certain things with government and you won't do certain things with government because we're abiding by the social compact is quantified in the Constitution. Those are the rules of engagement, and that's how we live e pluribus unum. No, we're engaged in a civil war. And so if you're going to put Soros prosecutors in place to essentially nullify the law and practice jury nullification on top of that, then no, I'm not going to let you get away with that. And I think that we need to see more of that in the country, actually. To me, what I saw there, which is something very rare, which is leadership.
I want to make sure I understand this. Are you saying that just because they did things that are unconstitutional, we should do things unconstitutional?
What I'm saying is the Constitution is a suicide pact. Why would you hold yourself to a contract that the other side does not? No divorce court would demand that. No civil court would demand that. No criminal court would demand that. Why would you do that?
Because you become everything you despise. You throw away the Constitution, then what do we have?
Do you think stopping prosecutors from not enforcing the law? To me, that's upholding the Constitution, not throwing it away. I think that's the spirit of the Constitution.
I think that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but you seem to be hedging on the Constitution. If the Constitution, there are all kinds of things we can do legally, but we should not become them.
I agree with that. I spend most of my show talking about that. But there is this idea that that's why I started with the use of power. There's this idea on the right that comes out of the kind of National Review crowd, and maybe I should have quantified this better. But this idea that the use of power, affirmative power from our side at all, is some kind of a violation of limited government in the Constitution. And I just don't agree with that at all. I think that that's the enforcement of the Constitution in our way of life, that we have to punish those who have acted outside the Constitution and the rule of law. I think to try to continue to impose some David Frenchian narrow definition of what the Constitution says so that we don't seem mean or we don't seem angry or we don't seem power thirsty while they get away with doing all the rioting and everything else they want to do whenever they want to do it and no one is punished. I think that's a suicide pact.
Yeah, I do too. But that is what I like to call, I will do everything in my power to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies,
Amen.
Foreign and domestic. Yeah. That's just your oath of office. Back in just a minute, we'll continue our conversation. First, let me tell you about my Patriot Supply. Look, things are going to be fine. What could possibly go wrong? I mean, are we going to hit nuclear war? Okay, don't think that one through. What, are there going to be riots and breakdown of society and so you won't be able to? Don't think that one through. There could be a giant wave that comes because the polar ice caps have melted. And then what are you going to do for food? And land, but food. May I suggest you go to My Patriot Supply? One of those things just doesn't belong with the others. Why don't you check it out now and see if you can get My Patriot Supply to be there for your family. I keep it on hand. It's really good. Things go south. MyPatriotSupply.com. Prepare today with emergency food from MyPatriotSupply.com. There were a couple of things a couple of people who I think did well. Vivek was just dogpiled on, but when it came to the border, I think he was the clearest of any of them by far. And, could say it because he's not a white dude. But I will tell you that I think in that clip of DeSantis there that we just played before the break, I think DeSantis won. For all the people that were there, he looked the most presidential. He was the one that led we're not going to do this game show and vote somebody off the island. Yeah. That was the dumbest question I've ever heard. Yeah. Did she actually think people would do that?
Christie did. He was the only one who, of course, jumped on it. It was a bizarre moment, though. Especially because it was like, they were supposed to write it down on secret ballots or so. I don't even know. I thought at first it was just a joke and she was going to move on to a real question, but no, apparently not.
Pick two winners from last night.
I think DeSantis was one. I think he looks the most presidential, kept out of it the most. I think he's the person who, in that field, look, we can all talk about the rise of Haley. You could talk about how Vivek has had his run, but look, DeSantis has held the second position this entire time. He really is that guy, and I don't think he did anything to mess it up. The other winner.
Hard to pick second one.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I actually felt watching it, which was I felt the Vivek attacks got to the point of ridiculousness last night. Look, I get that he has characteristics that people like to beat up on, but
he's the only one that started. Yeah. Who learned something from last time. Everybody else learned, I got to be mean. He learned the opposite. Yeah, I should be more humble. Yeah, and he was.
I think DeSantis had pretty much the same approach as last time, but maybe a little bit more aggressive. Everyone else was just let's all talk over each other. Yeah. I thought Vivek, he did change his tactic a little bit. People were going after him as if he was the leader. And the guy's at 5.6% in the polls. He's not Burgum, but he's not at the top even of the second tier. And the fact that he's constantly getting attacked, and he's starting to be treated almost like, the Nikki Haley thing really bothered me. It's what do you mean? He makes me dumber. Give me a break. Look, you could say a lot of things about Ramaswamy. He's not a dumb guy. You might not like him. You might think he's too young. I think that's a really fair criticism. But I think, so I would say Ramaswamy, I thought it did okay.
Two winners.
DeSantis for sure was the winner. And I think Vivek was the runner-up.
Steve?
DeSantis and all non-linear conservative media platforms.
Good for you. Good for you. Because I would go the big losers yesterday. I don't think you can compare them. Any of those who lost on stage, I don't think you can compare them to the Fox News credibility and the GOP's planning and strategy. Yeah. I think everything looked so wildly out of control, out of date, and in the bag for the traditional thing that doesn't exist anymore, that I thought those were the two big losers.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. Losers. I mean, I think after the polling, wrong on this one last time. I didn't think Nikki Haley was good in the first one, and I thought Nikki Haley was really grating last night. I thought she was really awful. Maybe that will be held wrong again when the polling comes out eventually. Maybe she'll have a rise off of that. If that's her performance, I don't like it. And Tim Scott, I think, look, again, I don't have a problem with Haley or Scott. Like, they're not exactly my flavor of conservatism, but
they're both good.
They're both fine, whatever. But like, I don't think either of them are. I mean, Scott just seems like he's out of his league. I mean, he really does seem out of his depth a little bit on this. He doesn't seem to do this very well. So I would say that I would pick those two.
I'm really done with the warmongers. I'm really done.
Oh, so am I.
I've just had it.
Yeah, I can tell.
I'm tired of it. Yeah, stop with the warmongering. Okay, we don't have to save the world. We can't. Okay, let's save ourselves, and then we can do what we can for others. But first, we've got to save ourselves. Otherwise, nobody's going to be around to save anybody else.
I mean, it's every time I hear the defense of Ukraine, and I see what the continuing resolution is, that was offered by McConnell and Schumer, where it's the same spending. They can't find a single egg to let go. Same spending, and then adding to Ukraine more spending there. I think I'm not even living in the same world as these people.
Stunning.
Steve.
I thought I agree with everything Pat and Stu said. I'll just belabor Stu's point. Why Tim Scott and Nikki Haley, who came up through the same South Carolina political gene pool and have been sharing consultants for decades, chose to blow each other up over curtain rods in provincial South Carolina stories nobody knows or cares about. I have no idea, but man, if I'm on the DeSantis campaign and I was worried about those guys capturing some kind of fire in Iowa when I'm trying to consolidate the non-Trump lane, I probably really enjoyed that.
Last question, and I've only got a minute for everybody to give an opinion. Does Trump make it to the general, and can he win the general?
My honest opinion is I don't know, but I'll say no.
Both?
I mean, I don't know is the real answer.
Yeah.
If you're forcing me into a guess,
forcing you to an answer.
I will say no.
To both of those?
Yes.
Okay. Pat?
I'm going to say yes to both. I think he makes it to it, and I think he wins if he does.
Steve?
My answer to no is both, and that calculation, that question was heavily involved in the decision I made to endorse in this race.
Yeah. Well, it's only fair that I answer the question myself. Crap, we're all out of time. I wish I had more.
Well, you did used to work for Fox News after all.
I'm going to go endorse Hillary Clinton now. We'll see you again. Good night.